I think this is probably the most requested topic in this series so far. On today's Parenting an Autistic Child video, we are going to be having a look at stimming. Hello folks, and welcome to another entry in the Parenting an Autistic Child series. I'm Kev. If you're new to the channel, we make a lot of videos about our life as an autism family here. Our son Andy, he's 14, he has autism amongst a couple of other conditions as well. There's a lot of videos on the channel are concerned with our day-to-day life as being that autism family. But in this series, we focus in on things a little bit further. And each week we take a topic that people ask us about and we do a deep dive on it. We take loads of questions on it and we basically examine one particular aspect of being an autism family. If that sounds like something that would interest you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn that notifications bell on, and then you'll be able to get involved in future videos in this series, because we always post the question and the topic over in the community page early on in the week before we release the new video. So if you want to be involved in next week's Q&A, subscribe, notifications on, Tuesday, Wednesday time, check the community page, or it should flash up in your subs box, and you'll be able to submit your questions for next week's topic, and of course get involved in all those future videos going forward. So today's video is about stimming, and I think stimming is one of those topics that we get asked about most, but without actually using the word to describe what it is. So the kind of questions that we get are things like, why is Andy flapping his hands behind his head? Or why is Andy flicking at his ears? Why is he rocking back and forth in a chair? Why is he shrieking and shouting? Why is he doing... They usually start with, why is Andy doing? And then it will be a thing. And usually, 9 times out of 10, what he's doing is stimming, or self-stimulatory behaviour, I think, if we use the full technical term. Basically seeking some kind of sensory input, either as a way to help him express an emotion that he's feeling or block out something that he's feeling. It can be for just an overwhelming level of excitement in his body. He's just so excited he has to get it out, and he usually does that by sort of flicking the back of his hair in his ears, and just when he's so excited that it's the only way he can express it. He can't get the excitement out there into the world any other way. Or sometimes it will be because he doesn't like the situation that he finds himself in. He's trying to stop it from overwhelming him. He usually expresses that through singing his words. You'll have seen on some of the videos that we've got on the channel where he's had meltdowns or come close to meltdowns. He often starts singing his responses to us, and that act of singing it's a stim. It's a way of him trying to regain some control on the situation, trying to block out the bad that he can feel coming on. Or it can just be something as simple as rocking back and forth in his chair because he likes the way it feels, or he's got a new thing where he likes to have skin to skin contact with Anna particularly, and he can't really walk past her without touching her in some way, often with his knee. And again, it's just seeking some kind of sensory input, some kind of stimulation, hence stimming. So I say we've got a lot of questions on this. We are going to jump into the questions really early on in today's video. I'm conscious that with a lot of these videos, they can be quite long. I never go into them with the intention of them being 25, 30-minute videos, but they always seem to end up that way. Hopefully this one's been a little bit shorter, and we'll start the questions right now in an effort to shorten the whole length of the video. So first up then, Ben asks, is there anything that sets off Andy's stims, like if he's happy or angry or sad? All of the above. And it's often different stims in different circumstances. The most common one is the flapping, and he makes like a noise with his lips as well whilst flapping, and that's when he is at his happiest. The video we put out on the channel yesterday, actually, when we were playing in the arcade in Skegness, when he was playing on the coin dozer machines, he was getting so excited. He was flapping and flicking at his hair, making the noise, and just generally just super happy. But like I mentioned before, if he can feel himself getting angry or upset, he'll start to sing, or he'll start to rock, or he'll jump up and down. And it can be an indicator of anything: happiness, sadness, anger, fear. Usually it's because he's feeling something that's out of the norm, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. Because it's taking him out of the norm, he wants to try and drag himself back into something that's a little bit more familiar. Do people stare at Andy in public when he's stimming? Some people probably do. It's one of those things. I mean, Anna yells at me about this. Not yells, but I get in trouble with Anna for this fairly regularly because I am completely oblivious to what's going on when we're out in public. So if Andy's screaming, shouting, running around, jumping up and down, I tend to just, Andy's having a good time. That's awesome. And I don't notice. I don't care. If people want to stare, let them stare. If people want to tut and moan, let them tut and moan. It's just water off a duck's back with me. I've been on the internet now long enough to just, everything is water off a duck's back. Someone giving me or giving Andy a dirty look on the bus or on a train, that's nothing. I don't really notice it. I know it does happen, and I know a lot of people can be very sensitive when it does happen to them or does happen to their kids. But I think you got to make a decision at some point whether it's worth letting that bother you. And I know it's one of those things that's quite it's a battle of the mind, really, where you just got to decide, is that going to be something that gets me down anymore? Is that going to be something that bothers me anymore? Because you're not going to stop it happening. As much as we're putting these videos out here to raise awareness of autism, there's always going to be people who don't understand what's going on, and they will be confused. So they stare to try and work out what's happening. They stare because they don't understand it, or because they find it funny, or because it's annoying them. And you're not going to change that by glaring back at them or tutting back at them or saying something. So I have just made the decision that it doesn't bother me. I'm just not even going to notice it anymore. And it's certainly a lot easier that way for me, I think. What are the main ways Andy stims, and did you find it unusual when you first met him? I think we've covered most of his main stims now. Did I find it unusual? I think like I was just saying about how when people are in public and they might stare because they don't understand, I didn't really get what was happening when I first met him. But Anna just explained it. Yeah, that's what he does. It means he's happy. Even the first time I met him, he would have been playing on it would have been an iPod at the time, and he would sit there kneeling on the corner of the chair with the iPod on the corner of the chair as well, and he would just be flapping his arms or jumping up and down or screaming, and she would just say, yeah, that means he's happy, that means he's enjoying himself. And I just took that at face value. If he's doing that, he's enjoying himself, it's happy. And as time has gone on and I got to know him a little bit more, I got to understand the different things that he did in different circumstances. But really, it didn't take long to just accept, yeah, that's what Andy does, and it's just normality now. I'm 14. I care for my brother who's 10 and has severe autism. He was told that he would never speak, and we weren't explained what stimming is. His most common stim is flicking his ears. He does it in public a lot, and people tell me to control my brother and say he's not normal. It's heartbreaking. How should I handle this? See, Kate, I've never experienced that. No, I'm not. So I find it very difficult to tell you how you should handle it, because I mean, Andy does exactly the same thing in public, and the worst we get is a few stares. I've never been told to control my kid. I've never been told that he's not normal. I suggest a lot of it is because I'm a 36-year-old, 6'2" man, and you're a 14-year-old girl. So I guess people find it a lot easier to criticise you than they would to criticise me. So it's quite difficult for me to help you with what you should do in that situation. But I know how I would handle it if it happened to me, is I would just completely ignore it. If they're people I've never met before, it just doesn't matter what they think. I can happily completely ignore them. If they're people who are supposed to be my friends, then I will tell them why they're wrong and put them in their place. And if they still think he's not normal, then they're not my friends anymore. And they go into the same category as the people I've never met. They just don't matter. So I think all you can do is, depending on who the people are, if they're strangers, just ignore them. If they're people you know, try and explain what's going on the way Anna explained it to me when I first met Andy. And if you're not getting anywhere, then those people probably aren't worth knowing, which I know it's not the most useful advice in the world, but like I say, it's not something I've ever experienced, so I can't really help anymore. That feels like a really rubbish answer. I'm sorry for a rubbish answer. How do we approach inappropriate stims? Luckily, he doesn't have loads of inappropriate stims. There's probably 2 that I would class that he's got that are inappropriate, and they're inappropriate for different reasons. One is the one where he puts his finger up his nose. I mean, it's not that it's rude or anything. He's not going to get told off in public for doing it, but it does damage the lining of his nose. It's germs and stuff. It's not nice. And we tell him to stop. He ignores us and carries on, and we keep trying to tell him to stop. So we just tell him. And when we tell him, he's straight out, but then he'll forget and he'll be straight back up there again. So that's an ongoing battle that you see in a lot of videos. His hand is up his nose. Or the other place it would be is down his trousers, which is obviously inappropriate for different reasons. He's not down there playing with himself the way you might think a 14-year-old boy is. That's not what's going on. He's just putting his hand in his trousers, often nowhere near the rude parts, just in his trousers. But again, he can't go around with his hand in his trousers, so all we do is ask him not to do it. Tell him to stop, or with the trouser one, tell him that if he wants to do that, he needs to go to his bedroom. But it hasn't really got us anywhere. They're very much still works in progress on both of them. If he had something that was actually dangerous or harming him or harming others, then I guess we'd need to come up with a more definitive response rather than just we tell him not to and then he doesn't, and then we kind of tell him again and then it goes on and he still does it. He'll get out of it eventually, but at the moment, because they're both fairly harmless, we've had bigger battles to have over the last few years, and it's actually the nose thing certainly has now just started to come up again in the meetings with the social worker and with his doctors, as all of us included, we're feeling that we're probably ready to start tackling that properly now. But while we've gone through the last 2 or 3 years and there's been so much more important stuff going on, it just felt like, yeah, you know what, his finger's up his nose, who cares, he's not going to school. Or his finger's up his nose, yeah, who cares, he's dangerously underweight. And there was always more important stuff happening. Whereas now, because he's made so many improvements in other areas of his life, we probably do need to focus in a little bit more on the more inappropriate stims again. Why do autistic children stim? And what is one of Andy's we've talked about Andy's typical stims, but why do autistic children stim? It's all to do with sensory seeking, sensory input. Like I say, it can be because there's such a build-up of excitement, they need to get it out. It could be to block out some kind of sensory input. One of the things that Andy will do if there's a particularly loud noise is he'll shout to go louder than the noise, so that it allows him. I read about it once where it's to do with it's not that he's shouting so loud that he's drowning out the other noise. That's not how it works, but it's giving him something else to focus on. So if there's lots of loud noises going on around him, if he shouts, he can focus in on listening to his own shout, which then helps him to block out the other stuff. So he's not trying to shout louder than the other stuff. He's trying to shout loud enough to give him something to focus on. And it's the same with the rocking in the chair and that kind of thing. It's all to do with just allowing him to focus in on something or express an emotion or a feeling that he can't express in any other ways. Loads of reasons why someone could be stimming. Do we ever stop him from stimming? If so, when and why? No. Not unless he's putting himself at risk from doing it. There's been a couple of times, not so much since he's had his new chair, but back when he had the previous chair, the 2-seater sofa that he used to have. I don't know if you remember seeing that in videos, where he would do the rocking back and forth. Because it sat a little bit lower behind him and he sat further back in the chair, there was once or twice where when he was rocking back and forth, he banged the back of his head into the wall. Not hard, but obviously we don't want him banging his head into a wall, so at that point we'd tell him to stop. There's another one that he's done from time to time where he just sits there kind of on the edge of the chair and bangs the heel of his foot into the floor, just repetitively over and over again, the point of the heel of his foot into the floor. And we tell him to stop that because we don't want him to damage his foot. But if it's just something he's doing and there's no risk to him or anybody else in him doing it, then we just let him get on with it. Do we find Andy has certain types of stims as a cue for a meltdown? As I noticed, my daughter will pinch the sides of her eyes before losing the plot. Singing is a big one. When he starts to sing answers to us, then we know to stop asking him questions. You'll have noticed. I mean, it doesn't come up so often on the vlog now because he's learnt to just say finished to tell me he doesn't want to be on camera anymore. But there used to be times where, particularly when he's fresh home from school, and I try and ask him about his day, and he's quite happy to answer the first 1 or 2 times, but he doesn't want to keep answering, and he would then start singing the answers to me, and generally that would be the indication that if you keep asking me these questions, I am just going to shout. That's it, I'm not going to be happy anymore. And he's kind of added that extra layer of just telling me that he's done now, that he doesn't want to be on camera anymore, or end of the vlog is another thing that he'll say. But yeah, singing answers is a big one, or humming, like really a long repetitive noise. That's usually an indication that something's really bothering him. So if, I don't know, me and Anna, say we're all in the car and me and Anna are squabbling about navigation the way couples do sometimes, we'll occasionally just hear him start going and that's when we know that us squabbling is bothering him, so we just have to stop. And so it's usually sound stims. There's a proper word for that I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's the usual thing that's an indication that he's ready to melt down. My son is verbal and vocal stims and gets told off at school, but he can't help that he does it. At home, I just block his vocal stimming out as it's loud. By the way, vocal stimming, that's what I was trying to find before. If he was non-verbal, the school would be more tolerable, I believe. Does Andy vocal stim? Any suggestions on how to tell my son's school to help them understand? So yeah, we've just given examples of how Andy does it from time to time. And to be honest, the thing with your school, it does sound awful, Crystal. I think if I were you, I would be looking to arrange a meeting with his teacher as soon as you go back in September. I would, because I'm stroppy, I would probably go straight to the head teacher and say, look, I want a meeting with you and the class teacher. And first of all, I wouldn't even be going, because I'm quite, I don't know if aggressive is the right word with this, but I like to get my own way with stuff like this. I want them to be treating Andy the way I think they should be treating Andy. So I wouldn't even go in there trying to explain it to them initially. I would be going in there and saying, right, this is what you're doing wrong and it needs to stop, and explain what they're doing wrong, and then explain why he needs to be able to do it. Because it's not on for them to punish him for a symptom of the fact that he has autism. That's not okay. And again, it can sound blasé and as if I'm not taking things seriously when I say stuff like this, but to me it's on the same. Criticising someone with autism for stimming is the same as criticising someone who's blind for not being able to see. You know, telling a child with autism in a class, punishing a child with autism for stimming in a lesson, to me would be the same as punishing someone who can't walk for not being able to go up to an upstairs classroom. It would be completely unheard of if it was a physical disability. And there's still that inequality in schools between physical disabilities and mental health. And the gap needs to be narrowed. And as soon as you start talking about that, head teachers in particular know that's a hot topic, know that's an issue that's in schools. And it all comes down to lack of appropriate training for their teachers. They know it because it's something that's discussed at head teacher level a lot at the moment. And once they realise that that's what's happening, then it will stop. If you've got a teacher who's punishing him for stimming, all that means is that teacher has no clue what stimming is. They've probably never had any kind of autism training. Mention it to the head teacher, mention it to the teacher, explain the symptoms of your son's autism. It is your son, isn't it? Yeah, of your son's autism. And explain to them that it's something that's unavoidable. And this is a phrase I haven't said on the channel for about a year, but if it comes down to them saying that, if they decide to sort of dig their heels in and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't care if it's a symptom of autism, it's not appropriate for the classroom, that's the point where you say, right, well, in that case, your school is unable to meet the needs of my child, let's find some more appropriate provision. Whether that means moving from mainstream school to specialist school, or from a special school to an autism specialist school, because I can tell you now, if he was in a school that was specifically for children with autism, they would never dream of punishing him for stimming. So there are schools out there that could more appropriately meet his needs if your school aren't willing to. But I would suggest just having that conversation with them means they're much more likely to understand the situation and act more appropriately. And then lastly, has there ever been a time when Andy has stimmed and hurt himself? My brother stimmed so fast that he hit his head on a wall. How would you prevent this? I mean, we talked about that exact situation with Andy. It's only happened a few times, and all you can really do is ask him not to do it. And if he still continues to do it, I mean, if it's something that he has to do, then maybe a cushion behind his head between him and the wall, so he's banging his head into the cushion. Or maybe when he's really getting into that rocking back and forth stim, maybe get him to sit on the edge of the chair, or maybe get him to stand up as he does it, or try and replace it with a more appropriate stim. So I don't know, this is where things like fidget toys and chewy toys and things like that might be able to come in. It might be that you could replace the rocking back and forth stim with spinning a fidget spinner or chewing on a chewy toy. So there's ways to try and replace one stimming behaviour with another. But often if it's one that's endangering the kid, then you got to just ask them to stop. And if they can't stop, that's when it's time to reach out to people who probably know a lot more about this stuff than I do, because as I've said before many times, I'm certainly not an expert. I know how we handle Andy, but if it's a situation we've never had with Andy, I often have no idea what I'd do. And Andy, by and large, if we ask him to stop, will stop. He'll sometimes start again almost straight away, but then when we tell him to stop again, he'll stop again. And we can distract him. If he's getting really into a stim, we can give him a chewy toy, and that'll take his mind off it, and he'll do that instead. So hopefully you should be able to replace it with an equally beneficial behaviour to him. And with that, I think we are there on this video. Thank you very much to everybody who asked questions. As ever, there were far more questions asked than we can ever fit into one video. So if I didn't get round to your question, I apologise. Hopefully we'll get to one of yours in the future. Keep an eye on that community page on the channel early on next week so you can find out what next week's topic is going to be. And to make it more likely that the questions you're interested in are going to get answered, check in on there on sort of Wednesday, Thursday next week and thumbs up all of the questions that you'd like to see answered, because that raises them to the top of the list. It means I'm more likely to get to them. If there's a question that someone's asked that 40 or 50 people have all thumbs up, then I know that's a question we probably have to answer as part of that video. So get involved in that community page. You can find it on the home page of the channel. It's the community tab. You can do it on mobile or on computer, and it will just brings you up to date with what's going on the channel. I use it probably 2 or 3 times a week, not just for this. So it's always worth just keeping an eye on that community page anyway. And obviously if you are subscribed to the channel with notifications on, then you will get notifications whenever we post to the community page anyway. So you'll be able to see this stuff as it happens over there. But hopefully today's video on Stims has been helpful to you. If you still have further questions on this topic, please leave them down in the comments. As ever in this series, we will happily revisit this topic a few months down the line if there's loads more questions that we haven't got to in this video. Or share your experiences down in the comments as well. Or if I think some of my answers today have maybe been a little bit woolly, a little bit fluffy, a little bit don't really. Some of them I'm not really sure I'm convinced about my own answers. So if you know this topic better than I do, then by all means let us know down in the comments as well, because like I say, I can only talk from our experience with Andy, and it might be that some of those questions that have been asked you have some specific insight in that can help the people who are asking them far better than I could, and the comments is a great place to share all of that. So if you have enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up for us, subscribe to the channel for more videos in this series plus our daily vlog, and thank you very much for watching.